Right. So we'll come together now just with our attention on our inner space. I think it's helpful to close the eyes and allow the breath to take you there. It's on the inhale, we're opening and filling up and allowing that experience of the fullness, the awareness of what's always going on, but sometimes we are unaware of it. And so this is conscious breathing, allowing the life, the breath of life to come in and fill us. And on the exhale, it opens up even larger. It opens up the space. And so on the inhale again, just coming home, falling into love. And on the exhale, just the expansion and the awareness that this is awareness. And as it opens up and we know the experience of this awake awareness, this spacious heart space, we know it as a space of all that is. Everything arises from this space. And thou art that. This is the source, and we have access to it. Notice that the opening into the source presence, consciousness, awareness. Notice that the body-mind also arises in this space. So unlike some of us for many years would go inward and it would feel like we were going into the body to access this space, we know it now as larger than, prior to, not a bodily contained domain. In this space, there is the experience of our true nature, both as awareness and as presence. The presence that embodies and fulfills every opportunity to express. This is the source of what is required in order for anything to manifest, for anything to show up, for any experience to occur. And it is of the nature of freedom and peace and love. It is of the nature of happy and expansion and welcoming. There is no duality here. We access this space, this inner space of awareness, by dropping out of our minds and into what we would call our heart, but it's much larger than what we think of as heart. It is the source. It is all that is, arising here as worlds, as opportunities, as connection, as apparent others, as even time and space, and all that this virtual reality consists of is sourced here, and I am that. This is the most profound shift to come to know oneself as that. From here, everything can be handled, everything can be seen. If there is an issue, you bring it into this space, and without resistance, you allow it to unfold. And it can disappear, it can shift, it can change. This is a space that if we were to think of magic, this is the space of magic. This is the space of realities. Everything arises here. And so consciously occupying this space now, we've dropped our mind, dropped the thoughts, and come home here, now. And so it is.
I want to let you know that Merle, Shapiro, and our friend Denise, wonderful.
Now, the most important thing that's going on here is that we are all together, that we are consciously acknowledging in our gathering that there's a possibility for a different reality, that there's a possibility to redream this reality, that to open up to a higher frequency, understanding many of us, because we have some kind of lay interest in quantum physics or whatever, but we also have the experience of changing our mind and our world changes. We have the experience of letting go of something and then something much larger than we could have ever figured out reveals itself. The possibility that the aliveness that we think we have to make happen is actually sourced in that space that we just shared. That it's alive and well and happening all the time, and it awaits our input, and our input is our frequency. So that's a little bit out of, that's not quite accurate. It doesn't await anything, actually. It's there in its aliveness and responding in every nanosecond to frequency. As we acknowledge, and I think it's important to say that many of us, all of us have been on similar paths of awakening and valuing awareness, valuing consciousness and the larger reality. And most of us have done many kinds of practices and activities, sometimes gratitude, which we know is a high frequency. Everything that we have practiced, the frequency shifts because of who we're taking ourselves to be. The frequency is not shifted so much by a practice. If we're putting sugar over shit, as I often say, by practice having a gratitude list while we're still pissed off inside and not available to ourselves on our own behalf, then the frequency the field picks up on is not what our intention was with our gratitude list, right? Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. And so this is pointing to the practice of affirmations and the practice of practice. So we are present and in response, as the field is in response to us. The quantum field is alive and well and manifesting a 3D reality as we, what do? As we measure, observe, as we offer the frequency. You know, it goes back to the double slit experiments. And so the wave doesn't turn into a 3D reality until the measurement, and then it's a photon, right? They now know that that huge molecules, not the size of photons. There were people who would say that the reason the photon would change when it was measured because it was a wave. I mean, the wave would change when it was measured and become a photon was because it was a wave and it was malleable and so forth. But now they know that molecules atoms and molecules, huge ones, also respond to observation. The field is in response. That's the key. That's the bottom line. The field is the one, it is who we are, but we are playing as particle in this little kindergarten model of mine. We're playing as particle, observing the quantum field through our frequency, measuring it through our frequency, and then seeing this world that shows up, looking like connection and looking like sometimes like lack, right? And it's not in order to blame ourselves. It's a mid-course correction. It's information. This is the information you need. Now, without that information, for many, many people, they don't shift out of fear-based identity until they have done what we often call hitting rock bottom, where they simply don't have access to any more resources, inwardly or outwardly. And they are caught in this sense of letting go. Yeah. So the high frequency of allowing, the high frequency of because when we are allowing, when we are letting go, we are the same as the field, right? We are now one with the field. I and the Father are one. And in that we are accessing, and so the materialization, the 3D reality that shows up is that at the high frequency of true nature. When we know ourselves as that through allowing, we've given up on insisting, we've given up on resisting, and we're present now at one. And then life reveals itself, matching that frequency. And that frequency is love. And I am that. And that's what each one of us can say. So we have the fun of playing in a 3D reality. And as we relax into giving up resistance, as we relax into what is our true nature, then we are at play in the fields of the Lord. None of this is religious in my book, as all of you know, but it's such good language, I mean, Moses speaking to the burning bush and the literal response, which we all ignore until we don't. Who do you say you are? I am that. I am. How much more literal could it be? Yeah, there was no equivocation there. Who is God? I am that. And so we know ourselves as an expression with the fun of a body-mind unit to play in this particular 3D reality, probably a virtual reality, but that's another day. And we know ourselves as that greater sourcing, magnificent presence of consciousness, of awareness, so undoubtedly source. So obviously, as we go there, as we sink into and relax out of the mind and find it's there, right there, and I am that. And so we have this great opportunity to recreate heaven on earth. And it starts with the earth of these bodies, these minds, and it extends into the earth of the satsang. It extends into the earth of the sangha, and the presence, the coherence that comes about is exponential. This is not an equation at 1 equals 1 or 1 plus 1 equals 2. This is an exponential experience because that's the nature of reality. It's the fractal nature of the reproduction, replication, and a world appears. Yeah. That's what we get to do. We get to play. The impediment to the full out joy and fun of that has to do with the mind. And since I'm doing Bible stories today, we know the mind as it was first expressed in the eating of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. So now we're caught in duality and polarity. And that's been the trap, right? Because what we experienced in the meditation when we dropped the mind was oneness. What we experience with the mind is separation. What we experience with the mind is the fear that came, and metaphorically, when we disobeyed God, right? And so we have the leftovers from that garden feast of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil. We have the leftovers from that in our need to understand, in our need to control, in our need to make sense of something. Reality doesn't make sense. It's just reality. It's just everything. So what we did last week, which I spoke to a few of you about, was in the meditation, I had you allow the bringing into that spaciousness of creation, whether it was a problem or whatever it was, and to understand how objects show up in the spaciousness, in the space. They show up because we invest in them. We invest in them with our attention, with our resistance. And then we believe that they have us. So again, today, just as a review, to realize that everything that's created and everything is created except awareness, which is the source, which is the arising awake awareness, the field in which creation arises. Everything else is a creation. All of the issues that you have, the problems that we might have, what happens is they show up in our inner world, in that experience, in that spaciousness. They show up, and then we are magnetized into them. And so now we have, say, a problem with a relationship or with money, and that's where all of our attention goes. Yeah. And when all of our attention goes, then the rest of the field like collapses around that. We're now not accessing what in fact creates. We are stuck with something old, something that's not alive, and it's called a problem. So we're stuck there, and we limit through our attention and our resistance to it. We are limited to it. There's no space around that. So last week in the meditation, what I ask you to do is open up the space around that, and then to be willing, without any resistance, to engage it, to experience it fully, to welcome it. And so I guess that's what's up for me today to share with you, is the benefit and the experience of the welcoming space. It feels like something that you don't want is showing up. Instead of clamping down with your attention into, I've got to change it, I've got to resist it, I've got to make it different. Now what we want to do is just allowing, seeing what that is. Maybe it looks like a relationship problem, a money problem, whatever kind of problem. But the truth is that without resistance to it, it will not fill up the field that is your true nature. And with the space around it, it has not the power of when we've allowed it to fill up our entire attention, our entire mind. And because what that is basically resistance. It may be attachment. It's probably resistance to it being that way. And then we are energizing it. We're contributing to it. We are insisting on it persisting. So that was the thing that was up for me today, because I spend a few minutes before we gather to see what might be coming through. And it has to do with that allowing spaciousness and consciousness around whatever you think is a problem. To remember that if you can see it, you're not it. You may feel that it has you, but the truth is you have it. And when you don't resist it, when you are with it, it simply can't hold together, because it was created out of a frequency of fear or resistance, whatever, old patterns, early childhood wounds, the conditioning of this reality as being fearful. Yeah. So as we come home to ourselves, then we have the wherewithal in which to allow everything to show up, whatever it's looking like. Now, the reason that it's looking like a problem is the distortion field that we have going on. But as we allow it, that distortion field starts to clear, because part of the distortion field is our programmed way of resisting and needing to control whatever's showing up that we don't like. So what I'm suggesting is that creating more space, creating more room, allowing more, even to the point of welcoming what you might have called a problem. It's like this, I mean, show me what you got, it's like, okay, here you are. I notice you, I've seen you before, I know what you are. You're the one that tells me that I'm not good enough and I'm not going to get what I want. But that's a story, and I see that the story is it's in the spaciousness, and I know it's limited because I, as the awareness, have access to it. So does this making sense to everybody about how to be with what we call problems or issues? It's like it's because the minute that you're not in resistance to it, it has no longer has the power, the energy to stay together, to stay coherent as a problem. It will start to shift some and change. And then as you allow it, and you are at that point no longer in fear or resistance to it, it will dispel. It'll fall away. You can't do that in order to get it to fall away. You can't fool Mother Nature, right? But that's the way it creates out of energy.
What about the strategy of seeing it all as a blessing?
Well, the minute that you start to, that certainly you could do that. What you're always risking is going into polarity, right? Allowing it to be whatever it is instead of this is bad or this is a blessing, relieves you at that part of the cycle, relieves you of polarity. That's the risk. That's the slippery slope. It's not that there's nothing wrong with it, and it may be helpful, but the reason that it's risky is it'll take you into preferring one end
Right.
instead of the other. And the minute that you're there, you're on slippery ground, right? Yeah. Thank you, Laura.
So if you have a question, here in the room, you can raise your hand. If you're in the on the video screen, please go to the reaction button and raise your hand, and I will call on you. If you can't figure that out, just type in the chat, I have a question, and I'll call on you that way.
All right, there it is.
Oh, so Judith. Okay, Judith.
Yeah, I just would like to say, Pali, thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow, what words, what a wisdom. And I just would like to ask something. I think the first time I didn't understand, I really know something. When you said to disobey God, you know, as a Catholic, normally it makes me guilty.
Right.
But this, when I was listening to you, the first time I realized it is maybe, it's a question, do I see this right? It was like a law. When I resist to the field, you know, then it is what in maybe years back, I thought it is disobey God.
Right. Yeah, and that's how things derived themselves, like the 10 Commandments or obedience or whatever. It took in this 3D reality, it took on out of the fearful nature that sky god can strike you dead or abandon you, right? But at the more fundamental, true nature of what's going on, you're exactly right. It's like resistance to God is resistance to oneself. You know, the big leap for everybody, because it's been considered blasphemous for 2,000 years or more, 5,000 probably. The one I am, the name of God, it wasn't in any way cloaked with subtlety. It was the name of God is I am. And that knowing gives us access to our true nature. And that's where we are all exactly the same. That oneness, that I amness is one. And that is, and so now, Judith, did I skip over your question? Were you asking me if you were a bad girl? Yes.
No, I thank you for your answer. It was just an experience I had that I realized it is not God, that we
That's
don't that we are not nice or so. It is we do this to the field and then we are doing this to ourselves, and this is the resistance. So yeah,
That's right. I think, you know, one of the reminders that came up just now for me was when Jesus was teaching the disciples, and he said, as you do it unto the least of these, my brethren, you do it unto me. but for each of us, we are the least of these because of our deepest self-rejection of what we call and work with as the childhood wound. That's the least of these. And so what that implies is a part of what I teach, which is you've got to come home to being on your own behalf, because otherwise you're going to be putting sugar over that shit of your self-rejection, and you're going to be behaving in a way out here to be a good person. Yeah. So this deep knowing and this awareness of the connection to all that is, and the awareness in which it all arises, starts to get, that's the mystical nature of this reality, what we would call the mystical nature. But what we get down to here is the very practical rubber meets the road kind of reality, where as you treat yourself, you are treating the entire reality. And if it's fear-based, you're participating in creating what we know on this planet as hell on earth, as difficulty, as wars and viruses and separation and confusion and climate change and on and on. Thank you, Judith.
Thank you, Polly.
Life is very simple and very close in, right? And I think that that's most readily available in our experience through this awareness of who am I being to myself. This is not narcissism, you see, because we've been trying to get what we thought we needed from out there, which is a projection, right? That in a way is that's transactional. That's what narcissism is. I need to get something from you. I need to get something from the situation or whatever. But back here with myself on my own behalf, I am present to participate in the apparent out there, whatever the circumstance is. Right?
Did you make that last point again? You remember where it was?
Yeah, I think the distinction that was occurring to me was how we believe that helping others, which is a natural, it's us, right? It's natural. It's the way of it. But we can't do it without it being transactional until we've cleared here with our true nature and our true identity. I am that. And from this place, but the part of getting to that place is to come home. We talked about this with our 6 steps practice. We abandoned ourselves, and so we are now magnetized into the out there. And what waking up is, it's a turning back and a return home to oneself, forgiving the aberration of the belief I'm a piece of shit or I don't matter, so that now we're present. And now from there, that's true north, we are totally available for the external. There won't even be a question. You won't need to figure out, how do I serve? That's what's already true and present, and I am that. Was that helpful, Grace?
I think so.
Maybe. Yeah. So peaceful. Mhm. No me, no problem. What was that moving to? When you don't see well, everything's a mystery.
Yeah.
Oh my God, it's a cat.
I love the phrase that you used in the meditation, Pali, the space of miracles. which I
Right,
think is the space that we're creating here
right.
over the last months, is a space of miracles. And then I realized it sounds like a great title for a magazine article. So I'm gonna do an article on that and you for the magazine I write for their February edition.
Yeah, each of us is the space of magic and miracles, for sure. What's counterintuitive to us, or maybe counter-rational, is that we are already that, and any efforting on behalf of that can keep that from arising.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
Polly, I have a question. It's regarding when you talked about if you have a problem and you then just don't resist it.
Mhm.
Well, does that mean like you look at it and go, I mean, I always seem to have an issue with that part of it. Is
Uh-huh.
like, what is it looking at it and just saying, well, this is what it is for now. And I know it's not saying push or go away. That is the resistance
Right.
of it. And but I get confused. I mean, for me, I have a little bit of an issue.
Right, yeah, well, it does go back to what you were pointing to, what's the definition of resistance in a way, right? But if you, can you imagine that you have some issue, and you believe that it's a problem, in other words, it's causing difficulty for you. So then that gets the label, that's a problem. If you take that label off and it's just what's happening, it sounds like a kind of a little trick with words. But if you allow yourself to see it differently, it's just what's happening, then the opportunity for different kinds of approaches or solutions comes from the field. If you believe that it's a problem and it's against you, then you're kind of locking in that interaction, that dynamic, and you're not going to access the wisdom, because now the belief that anything is a problem is an aspect of a fear-based person. It's just what's happening. And this is for a lot of us right now, this is the intersection in our practice where we are. It's like, without making something up, to say that when I can't pay my taxes, that's just what's happening. But the minute that you have that kind of relationship with whatever's happening, instead of believing that it means something about me, right? When it means something about me, I'm most likely going to be in some form of resistance to it. So it's not really semantic, but it can seem that way. It's like having it be just what's in front of you to do, right? The minute that you think it's a problem, it's kind of like you're locked into your own fear-based woundedness regarding it and life.
So if you like saw a pile of ants in your house,
Right.
I mean, you can look at it, oh my God.
Right.
Or you could just say, I'm gonna call the exterminator.
Right.
And let's get rid of this.
Right.
And or sweep it out of the house or whatever, as opposed to I get what. Okay,
That's a
fine.
great example. Yeah.
Okay.
Or
Just-
remember
See it
that you
as
have
it
an ant
is.
farm.
I have a pile of ants, or I have a
Yeah.
whatever, I have, that helped me, thank you very much.
Yeah, so what you're actually giving an example of is exactly what the fall was, when we decided we wanted to be like God and say what was good and what was bad. As we relieve ourselves of that, which is the polarity, then we move into the space of just, this is what's happening and this is what's in front of me to do, because it doesn't mean anything about a me anymore. That's the bottom line of that. That's the underpinning of that. That's why it's such a reality shifter. Because if I believe the ants, oh my God, it always happens to me. Every time I move into a new apartment, I have all these ants. What did I do wrong? I just can't stand this. And you start doing whatever you do reactively, but you can see that it's because you're caught up in it meaning something about a me. Yeah, life doesn't mean anything about a me. It's just what's happening. And as you start to be that way with it, then what happens? Because you being that way with it implies and actually is the experience of no self-judgment. So when the judgment falls away, and we've talked about this model before, but when there's no judgment, which creates the distortion field, when that's fallen away, this is just what's happening. And it's without implication about who I am.
Right.
It's what I have. And as that distortion field, that judgment falls away, the experience is of being connected. Now, because you're not judging yourself, there's no lens of judgment here that you judge others, our situations are, and the labels fall away. Thanks, Marty. I'm so glad you came. Yeah, so that booger that is at the heart of all of this mess is our self-judgment. Yeah, that's it. That's it. I mean, that's why the focus of this teaching is the 6 steps, to see what triggers us in this present time, takes us into the self-judgment that got installed, maybe prenatally, maybe it may have been a karmic thing, but probably in at least the first 7 years, the collective conditioning piles on. And now we've got an entire 7.5 billion fear-based people trying to get something or avoid something.
What happens when you see this cycle? So, for instance, if I've noticed for myself that if I feel a certain kind of rejection around a man or a gallery accepting my work, I notice in the beginning I definitely personalize it. You know, I hook into it,
Right.
and kind of pile into some story about myself.
Mhm.
And I've started to notice more that I'm doing it, but I'm just waiting for the time when what you're describing is happening a little more fluidly, where it's like not a hook anymore. It's like a passing, like a moment. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So who's talking to
Beth.
Beth? Yeah. Do you have the 6 steps to freedom process for
I
Beth?
just read it today.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
it.
So what you're describing is being triggered by something that occurs, right? So that's the first step. I'm upset or I'm triggered. And so those steps take you into, and this is the power of that kind of thing happening, is that it takes you back to what you're believing about yourself, that the frequency of which is cause in the matter of the external event. So it's a great opportunity. Good that you're recognizing it, right? It's not just going to fade away on its own, by the way.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm kind of hoping.
Darn.
But
I saw it and I'm fine with it. Now can it go?
I see it a little sooner, but I still.
Right.
Into it and
Yeah.
begin the self-rejection process. or
Yeah.
Whatever the root cause is.
Yeah.
And it makes me very curious, the embeddedness of that. Feeling cycle. I'm so really loving this discussion.
Yeah, it's curiosity is so excellent. You know, being curious is a shift out of the frequency of resistance or fear. That's a good reminder of that. Thank you.
I just made a connection to something that I don't think I ever have moved that far on, and it was a connection between fear-based thoughts and created problems and self-judgment. And so I just went into that when you were speaking about it a couple of ideas ago. And I realized that, like, if I have a fear, say that there's going to be something that has to happen in my work world that I'm going to have to deal with, that's a fear. But if I have the self-judgment, like I'm not going to be strong enough to handle that.
Right.
I'm not going to be able, that's going to be too much for me. That then there's that self-judgment that comes in. Whereas if I was just able to notice and observe the created the created problem I just created, which is, oh, there's going to be this thing I have to do in December, and I'm scared about it. But why?
Mhm.
Why am I scared of that?
Right.
Because I have a judgment on myself
Exactly.
that I'm not capable of handling that in the flow,
That's right.
and I'm going to be uncomfortable, unhappy,
Yeah.
put out, thrown off. And so I just made that connection. that
Excellent.
There is a connection between self-judgment and fear, and without the self-judgment, I would be easier to just notice, like, oh, okay, you have some stuff going on about that, but then my higher self comes in lately more, and she says, you know, whatever it is, we'll handle it. There's nothing to be afraid of. I'm
Mhm.
here with you.
Mhm.
There's nothing that comes along in your life that we can't deal with. Everything's been perfectly designed for our evolution. So that instead of the self-judgment, this higher view then shares. I'm just rambling.
No, but that was a good connection you made, because the self-judgment, the source of that worried fear, concern about the future, what was coming up, is exactly sourced by that self-judgment. And but without that connection, you will be working at the level of the problem.
Right.
Yeah, that was really a good insight.
We've got just a few more minutes before we go into meditation. If anyone else has a question
No topic.
or topic for the next 3 minutes.
Does anybody have a problem with that now is the only time there is, except it's not time? Just a shit stirrer here a little bit.
Now o'clock.
Now o'clock.
Now o'clock.
Yeah.
I have a problem with all these people coming into this Kihei area, South Maui, and forcing people out of their homes, and then remodeling them, and then renting and selling them for double and triple with whatever it was.
Mm.
That's it.
How does that make you feel, Max?
It feels, at least me feel that I'm being treated unfairly as a lot of other people are.
Right.
And so I feel sad.
Yeah. Yeah, so we don't have time now, but we can do the 6 steps on that, find out where your core wound is. It's not going to change what's going on in the real estate market here, but it can change how you are with it. And when that shifts, because it's no longer connected to that wounding identity, what can happen is that we get information. We get information about maybe something to do, maybe not, but maybe a way to allow to be different with it. But it's not to take away the reality of the problem. It's to free oneself up so that we are in a different relationship to it, and that could help alleviate your feeling of sadness and like probably hopelessness about it. Because what we typically feel about something in the larger arena like that is that we don't have the power to do anything about it. And as we clear that out of the way, either the issue may lose its importance for us, but the other thing that can happen is that from the field, something to do about it may show up.
Right.
Can't imagine what that would be, because I understand what you're saying, yeah.
And if all else fails, you can see it as a blessing.
I'll leave that.
My specialty.
So on that note, it's 4 o'clock. If you'd like to leave the room, or if you'd like to leave the Zoom room, thank you for coming. And if you'd like to leave a donation for Polly, if you're in the room, there's a basket here. Otherwise, there's Venmo or PayPal, if that speaks to you. Thank you so much, Polly.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
We're going to be going into 45 minutes of silent meditation, which is the creme de la creme.
Yes.
We invite you to stay and enjoy that, if that speaks to you.
Aloha to everybody who's leaving, and thank you all for being here. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
That's all right.
Thank you.
You the timekeeper, Robin?
Yeah, I got it.
So when we have this much space, time to go into the altered state of the awake awareness, we can actually use it as a reminder of the nature of eternity and timelessness, because typically what happens is that we lose a connection with linear time in this space. You starting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pali. Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much,
everyone.
family. Wonderful.
Happy Wednesday.
It was so lovely. Thank you.
And to Heidi, Deborah, Vandy, Marley. Okay,
So
take care, everyone.
Thank you, Polly. Love you.
Thank you, Polly.
Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you,
Thank you, Pali.
Thank you, angels.